Now let's talk about synonyms. Now, synonyms is one of the newest additions to SQL Server, and it actually kind of dates back to SQL Server 2005. But a synonym is really just a nickname, if you will. It's an alternative name for a database object. The best way to think about a synonym is I have a database object out there, a table, and that table is named employee. Well, I can take a synonym and give it an alternative name, like all employees or just EMP, whatever I want to do. But that synonym, anytime I use that synonym in any of my code, it will actually point to that underlying database object, which in this case is the employee table. The reason I went that roundabout way of saying that is because the synonym itself is a database object. You can look over there in the tree inside Management Studio, and you will see synonyms listed inside the database, just like stored procedures or views. So a synonym is an object, but it points to an object, or it renames an object, if you will, gives it a second alternative name. So when you read Microsoft's documentation, kind of like what I'm doing here, it gets confusing because they're talking about an object and points to the other object and the underlying object and so forth. Well, here's the bottom line. The database object that you're creating a synonym for can exist either on a local server, the one you're working on, or on a remote server, meaning another SQL server somewhere else on the network. So I can rename objects and then reach across the network and use these synonyms. Now, what advantage to using these synonyms? They're a little bit confusing till you get your head around them. I'm going to show you a little animation in just a second to help that. But it simplifies object naming, especially for objects on remote servers. Now, in the real world, we end up with multiple SQL servers with multiple databases on each SQL server in different places. And sometimes they're geographically dispersed throughout a large enterprise organization. So simplifying the object naming is pretty cool. But here's the big advantage. It provides a layer of abstraction between the real name of the object and the name we use in code. Think about this. If I've got that employee table out there and we have some sort of security reorganization or we have something that makes us change everything up, right? If you've ever been in corporate IT, you know, it's like somebody's watching, and once you get everything flying straight and level, nothing's vibrating or smoking, any of that kind of thing, then we have a massive reorganization and we have to change things and move things around, and different people are responsible for things and so forth. But I digress. If I take that employee table and to create a layer of abstraction, I create a synonym called all employees. And that synonym points to the employee table. Well, later on, if we need to rename that employee table, we've got a problem without a synonym because in code all over the place in stored procedures and queries, we've got it written to select, from employee, insert into employee, delete from employee, update employee, but we just change the name of it. Well, if I'm using a synonym and the synonym is all employees, I just point my all employee synonym to the new table name and all my code is corrected. Pretty cool, right? So that's the big advantage. You'll normally hear the big advantage for synonyms is providing a layer of abstraction, and that is exactly what that means. So let's look at a little diagram here. I have a SQL server out there, and in that database is the employee table. Now, that employee table is on server 2, and I'm writing code that's going to run on server 1. And it's on server 2, and it's in the AdventureWorks database. Now, there is a way to access remote objects in SQL Server on remote servers, and if you've got it set up correctly, you can use what's called four-part naming. So to query this particular table from a remote server, from server 1, I would have to say select last name from, and I just can't say employee because employee is on a remote server. So what we have to do is say the name of the server it's on, dot, the name of the database it's in on that server, dot, the schema name, person, dot, and then the name of the table, employee. Okay, so this will reach across the network and select the last name from the employee table on server 2 in the AdventureWorks database. So that's four-part naming. If you ever hear about that, that's exactly what that is. But if I create a synonym for server 2 AdventureWorks person employee and call it EMP table or employee table or EMP table, Notice what my query looks like now. Select last name from emp table. And by the way, if they ever change the name of this employee table to employees and they put an S on it, don't know why they would, but that might happen. All I have to do is go update my synonym right here to point to Server 2 AdventureWorks person employees. And I've taken care of that problem. So once again, what if the name is changed? Using synonyms and all the code makes it very, very simple because I just refocus my synonym and there I am. So that's a 30,000 foot view, if you will, of synonyms. I hope it helps. We will look at creating a synonym later on. But in this little section of all these understanding videos that you'll see out there, I wanted to just introduce the concepts of these things to you because you'll hear about them a lot mixed into all the documentation that you read and see out there. And I wanted you to have just a grasp of what's going on so that when we get to them, we can jump into them and you'll know immediately what's going on, why we're writing this code, the way we're doing it, and what we're going to do with these objects. So that's the lowdown on synonyms. I hope it helped.